The crystal champagne glasses clinked, and fake laughter echoed through my mother's expansive living room. I stood in the doorway, clutching the small white gift box tied with a silver ribbon, watching my stepsister Amanda hold court among the party guests. She'd orchestrated this entire surprise 50th birthday celebration for my mom, making sure everyone knew what a devoted daughter she was. If only they knew the truth. My name is Sophie Mitchell, and I was about to expose a 15-year lie that would shatter my family's carefully maintained facade. The weight of the DNA test results in the gift box felt heavy in my hands, but not as heavy as the secret I carried since finding my mother's old diary 3 months ago. Oh, look who finally showed up. Amanda's sugary sweet voice cut through the party chatter. Sophie, darling, we thought you weren't coming. Again. The implied criticism was clear. I'd missed the last 3 family gatherings, but only because Amanda had accidentally given me the wrong dates. I forced a smile. I wouldn't miss Mom's birthday. Amanda's perfectly made-up face twitched. She'd spent the last 15 years positioning herself as the perfect daughter, ever since her father married my mom when we were both 17. Now, at 32, she'd managed to convince everyone, including my mother, that I was the problem child, unreliable, distant, always causing drama. Mom's about to open prisons, Amanda announced loudly, shooting me a warning look. Though some of us actually remembered to bring something worth giving, I clutched the box tighter. Don't worry, Amanda. I brought exactly what this party needs. My mother sat in her favorite armchair, surrounded by expensive gifts from Amanda and her father's country club friends. She looked happy, but tired. The kind of tired that comes from years of trying to keep the peace, of always taking Amanda's side to avoid conflicts with her husband. Sophie, honey. Mom brightened when she saw me. You made it. Before I could reach her, Amanda intercepted, carrying a massive gift box wrapped in designer paper. Mother, you simply must open mine first. I had it specially made. The room watched as my mother unwrapped an outrageously expensive handbag, the exact one Amanda had been dropping hints about wanting for herself. It's beautiful, Mom said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Just like the daughter who gave it to you. Amanda's father, Richard, boomed from across the room. He'd never missed an opportunity to praise his precious daughter, even if it meant diminishing me. I stepped forward. Mom, I have something for you too. Amanda's eyes narrowed. We're doing big gifts first, Sophie. You can give her your little, whatever it is, later. No, I said firmly, years of suppressed anger giving strength to my voice. This can't wait. My mother looked concerned. Sophie, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong, Amanda cut in. She's just trying to make everything about her. As usual. I ignored her, holding out the white box. Mom, I found your old diary while helping you clean out the attic last month. The one from 15 years ago. The color drained from Amanda's face. What diary? Mother doesn't keep diaries. But my mom had gone very still, her hands frozen on the designer handbag. Sophie. I read about what happened the summer before the wedding, I continued, my heart pounding. About the argument you had with Richard. About the real reason you got married so quickly. Amanda lunged forward, her expensive manicure reaching for the box. Give me that. You're ruining everything. No. I held the box away from her. Everyone needs to know the truth. About the baby you lost that summer, Mom. The baby that wasn't Richard's. The room went deadly quiet. Amanda's father stood up so quickly his chair toppled backward. What is she talking about, Helen? My mother's hands were shaking. Sophie, please. But Amanda had reached me, clawing at the gift box like a wild animal. Shut up. You're lying? My mother would never. Your mother? I snapped, struggling to keep hold of the box. That's the biggest lie of all, isn't it, Amanda? With a final desperate grab, Amanda knocked the box from my hands. It hit the floor, the lid popping open, and papers scattered across the expensive Persian rug. DNA test results, diary photocopies, and hospital records filled out like accusations. Amanda froze, her eyes fixed on the papers. The first page had landed face up, its heading clearly visible to everyone. DNA kinship analysis. No maternal match found. What? Amanda's voice cracked. What is this? I picked up one of the papers, my voice steady despite my racing heart. The diary wasn't the only thing I found in the attic. I also found your original birth certificate, Amanda, the one with your real mother's name on it. The silence in the room was deafening. Amanda's perfect mask cracked, tears streaming down her face, smearing her expensive makeup. "No, Daddy, tell her she's lying." But Richard had gone pale, his eyes fixed on my mother. "Helen?" My mother stood up slowly, the designer handbag falling forgotten to the floor. "I think," she said quietly, "it's time we all told the truth." The party guests stood frozen, watching the drama unfold like a scene from a movie. 15 years of lies were about to come crashing down, and the small white gift box that had started it all lay empty at our feet, its silver ribbon curled like a question mark on the floor. The silence that followed felt like glass about to shatter. Amanda stood amid the scattered papers, her perfectly curated world crumbling around her designer heels. The truth she'd spent 15 years denying was literally at her feet. "I don't understand," one of the party guests whispered, breaking the tension. "Are you saying Amanda isn't?" "She's not my daughter," my mother said quietly, her voice carrying in the stunned room. "She never was." Amanda whirled on her father. "Daddy, tell them Mom adopted me. Tell them she's my real mother." But Richard's face had gone from pale to ashen. He dropped heavily onto the nearest chair, looking every bit his 60 years. "Amanda, please." I picked up another paper from the floor. "Your real mother was Richard's secretary, Catherine Porter. She died when you were 2 years old. Mom married Richard when you were 3, and they rewrote your history." "No." Amanda screamed, her careful society mask completely shattered. "You're lying. You're just jealous because Mom loves me more than you. She's not your mom." I shot back, years of pent-up frustration bursting forth. "You've spent 15 years trying to push me out of my own family, acting like you were the perfect daughter, making me look like the troublemaker. But you were living a lie." My mother stepped between us. "That's enough, both of you." She turned to the party guests. "I think it's best if everyone leaves. This is a family matter." As the guests hurriedly gathered their things and fled the uncomfortable scene, Amanda collapsed onto the sofa, mascara running down her cheeks. "Why?" she whispered. "Why are you doing this to me?" "Because you needed to know the truth," I said, softening slightly at her obvious pain. "Because every time you tried to edge me out of Mom's life, every time you made me feel like I didn't belong in my own family, you were actually the one who didn't belong," she finished bitterly. "Is that what you were going to say?" "No," my mother interrupted firmly. "Nobody is saying that, Amanda. You are family. Just not in the way you thought." Richard finally spoke, his voice rough. "I wanted to protect you, Princess. After your mother, after Catherine died, I couldn't bear to see you hurt anymore. When I met Helen and we fell in love, it seemed easier to just start fresh, to give you a new mother, a new life. By lying to me?" Amanda's voice cracked. "By making me believe Helen was my real mother? Did everyone know except me?" "No," my mother said softly. "Only Richard and I knew. Even Sophie didn't know until she found my diary." I sat down, clutching the DNA results. The diary explained everything. How Richard convinced you to pretend Amanda was yours. How you legally adopted her but kept it secret. How you both decided to never tell anyone the truth. "But why now?" Amanda demanded, turning to me. "Why ruin everything?" "Because I couldn't watch you destroy my relationship with Mom anymore," I answered honestly. "Every time you made me look bad, every time you played the perfect daughter while painting me as the failure, you were living a lie that was hurting everyone." Richard stood up suddenly. "This is my fault. I created this situation. I thought I was protecting you, Amanda. But maybe I was just protecting myself from having to face the past." Amanda stared at the birth certificate on the floor, her real mother's name clearly visible. "Catherine Porter," she whispered. "I don't even remember her." "She was beautiful," Richard said softly, "and she loved you more than anything. When she got sick, she made me promise to make sure you had a mother's love. So you erased her." Amanda's voice was sharp with pain. "Replaced her with Helen and pretended she never existed." My mother moved to sit beside Amanda, and for the first time in 15 years, I saw my stepsister's perfect facade completely dissolve. She looked lost, like a little girl whose world had just been turned upside down. "I never meant to replace your mother," Mom said gently. "I just wanted to be there for you, to love you." "Maybe we went about it the wrong way, but that love was real, Amanda. It still is." Amanda looked at me, tears still streaming down her face. Is that why you always fought harder for Mom's attention? Because you knew she was really yours? I shook my head. No. I fought because you were always trying to push me out. Now I understand why, somewhere deep down. Maybe you knew something wasn't quite right. The room fell silent again, but this time it was different. The tension had shifted from anger to something more complicated. Grief for lost truths, relief for secrets finally spoken, and uncertainty about where we would go from here. My mother picked up the scattered papers, carefully placing them back in the white gift box. We can't change the past, she said quietly, but maybe now we can build something honest, something real. Amanda stood up, her legs shaky. I need time to process this. She looked at her father. I want to know everything about her. About Catherine, no more lies. As Amanda walked out of the room, followed by Richard, I caught a glimpse of something I'd never seen before in my stepsister's eyes: vulnerability. The perfect daughter act had crumbled, leaving behind someone who might, finally, be ready for a real relationship instead of a manufactured one. My mother touched my hand. This isn't how I imagined spending my birthday. I'm sorry, I said. But it was time. She nodded, looking at the gift box that had changed everything. Yes, she agreed softly. I suppose it was. My heart stopped when David's name lit up my phone screen. My son-in-law rarely called unless he wanted something, and his calls always left me uneasy. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail, but worry for my daughter Sarah and my grandkids made me swipe to answer. Hello? I said, striving to keep my voice even. Martha, David began, his tone slick with false warmth. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. I gripped the phone tighter, dread coiling in my stomach. What do you need, David? He chuckled, the sound sharp and calculated. Straight to the point, as always. Well, since you asked, I need $50,000. By Friday. The amount was staggering, and my breath caught. 50,000. David, that's non-negotiable, he interrupted, his feigned charm dissolving. Unless you want to explain to Emma and Lucas why Grandma won't be around anymore. A chill swept through me. What are you talking about? It's simple, he said, his voice suddenly icy. You give me the money, and everything stays as it is. You keep your Sunday dinners, your little video chats, the whole routine. But if you don't, he let the threat dangle. Sarah and I might decide it's time for a fresh start, somewhere far away. I sank into a chair, my legs unable to support me. You can't do that. Sarah would never agree. Sarah will do whatever I tell her, he said, the venom in his tone unmistakable. You know that as well as I do. So what's it going to be, Martha? 50 grand or goodbye forever. The line went dead, leaving me reeling. I stared at the phone, my mind spinning with fear and fury. My name is Martha Collins, and until that moment, I hadn't known it was possible to hate someone so deeply. But the icy rage that coursed through me as I sat in my kitchen, imagining my grandchildren slipping out of my life, it was something I'd never felt before. David had been tightening his grip on Sarah for years, transforming her from a vibrant, independent woman into someone unrecognizable. My brilliant daughter, once bound for medical school, now lived a shadow of a life trapped by his manipulation, and I'd watched, heartbroken, as she made excuses for him, just as I had for her father long ago. But I wasn't that timid woman anymore. I'd spent years rebuilding my life after Robert's death, learning to stand tall and fight for what mattered. David had underestimated me. I need time to think, I had told him, masking my emotions behind a calm facade. He clicked his tongue. You have until Friday, and Martha? Don't even think about telling Sarah. We wouldn't want her upset, would we? The memory of his words fueled my resolve. I wouldn't let him win. I walked into my study, where a wall of family photos told the story of better days. Sarah's radiant smile at her graduation, Emma toddling toward the camera, Lucas blowing out candles at his last birthday. I saw it all so clearly now, the cracks in Sarah's smiles, the way she seemed to shrink in David's presence, just as I once had. I powered on my laptop and began to type, years of silent preparation finally paying off. Every demand David had made, every veiled threat, every suspicious bruise Sarah explained away, all of it poured onto the screen. I'd been documenting for years, not wanting to admit I might one day need it. Now I was grateful I had. As I typed, a text from Sarah came through. Mom, are you coming to Sunday dinner? The kids miss you." My heart ached at the thought of those sweet faces. "Wouldn't miss it for the world, sweetheart," I replied, forcing a smile. Then, with a deep breath, I picked up the phone again. David thought I'd crumble under his threats. But he'd miscalculated. I would do anything for my grandchildren, but I wouldn't play by his rules. "Hello, Detective Martinez," I said when the line connected. "This is Martha Collins. I think it's time we talked about David." Sunday dinner came with the weight of a storm, a culmination of 3 tense days spent working with Detective Martinez to piece together a case years in the making. Now, as I stood on Sarah's front porch with a casserole in my hands, a familiar knot of dread twisted in my stomach. Entering David's domain always felt like stepping into enemy territory. The door flew open before I could knock. "Grandma." Emma's voice rang out as she flung herself at my legs. At 7, she was the mirror image of Sarah at her age. Wild curls, gap-toothed smile, and eyes brimming with joy that hadn't yet been dimmed by life. "There's my girl," I said, bending to kiss her forehead. "Where's Lucas?" "Helping Daddy in the garage," she whispered, her voice losing its usual brightness. Even Emma knew to tread carefully when mentioning David. Sarah appeared behind her, wiping her hands on a dish towel. The bruise barely concealed by her sleeve made my stomach churn, though I kept my face calm. "Mom, you're early," she said, attempting a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I thought you might need a hand with dinner," I replied, handing her the casserole. Her fingers trembled as she took it. Before she could respond, David's voice boomed from the garage. "Actually, we need to have a little family meeting first." His imposing figure appeared in the doorway, with 5-year-old Lucas trailing behind, his usual exuberance replaced by a subdued, downcast demeanor. "Emma, Lucas, upstairs," David commanded. The children didn't hesitate, retreating quietly to their room. David led us to the living room, where he took his throne-like armchair. Sarah perched nervously on the edge of the couch, while I sat beside her, close enough to feel her trembling. "So, Martha," David began, his sharp smile cutting through the room, "have you thought about our little conversation?" Sarah's brow furrowed in confusion. "What conversation?" David's tone shifted, dripping with Fox's concern. "Oh, did your mother tell you? She's been stirring up some trouble, making some unfortunate accusations. I kindly asked her to make amends with a small contribution to the family." Sarah turned to me, fear flickering in her eyes. "Mom." I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "Don't worry, sweetheart. Everything's going to be okay." David's laugh was cold and mocking. "Is that so? Because I don't see $50,000 in your hand, Martha, and we had an agreement." "We did," I said, my voice steady as I pulled out my phone. "Just not the one you thought." With a tap, I played the recording. David's own voice filled the room, dripping with malice. "You give me the money, and everything stays the same. Sarah will do whatever I tell her to do." David's face turned ashen. "You recorded me. That's illegal." "Actually," Detective Martinez said, stepping into the doorway with her badge gleaming, "in this state, recording threats is perfectly legal, and we've gathered quite the collection of your handiwork." David leaped to his feet, but 2 officers behind Martinez quickly restrained him. David Miller, one said, "You're under arrest for extortion, domestic abuse, and financial fraud." "This is absurd," David sputtered, his eyes darting to Sarah. "Are you going to let them do this? Tell them." But Sarah's attention wasn't on him. Her eyes were locked on Lucas, who had wandered back downstairs, his small arms bruised in a pattern too familiar to ignore. "How long?" she whispered, her voice cracking. "How long has he been hurting Lucas?" 3 months, Emma's quiet voice came from the stairs. "He said if we told anyone, he'd send us away from Mommy." Something snapped in Sarah then. Years of fear, doubt, and helplessness melted away, replaced by something fierce and resolute. She rose, her voice trembling at first but growing stronger. "Get out of my house. Get out, and never come near my children again." David's protests were drowned out by the officers leading him out in handcuffs. His threats echoed faintly before the door slammed shut behind him. Detective Martinez stayed behind, explaining the restraining order already in motion and the charges piling up against David. "Your mother's recordings were the final piece we needed," she said. "Financial abuse often escalates, and when kids are involved, Well, he won't have the chance to harm anyone again. That night, as I helped Sarah pack essentials to bring the kids to my house, I found a dusty photo album tucked away in her closet. Inside were pictures of Sarah before David, her glowing smile at her medical school acceptance, her arms flung wide in celebration, her eyes full of dreams. I forgot who I used to be, Sarah whispered, tracing the photo with trembling fingers. You didn't forget, I said, wrapping an arm around her. You just got lost for a while, but we're going to find you again. The weeks following David's arrest unfolded with the precision of justice long overdue. Detective Martinez had promised, and she delivered. Our evidence was undeniable. Bank records revealed years of financial manipulation, stolen credit cards, forged checks, and secret accounts where David had siphoned funds meant for Emma and Lucas's future. It was a paper trail of betrayal. The most poignant discoveries, however, came from Emma's art therapy sessions. Her drawings spoke volumes her young voice couldn't yet articulate. Dark figures overshadowing stick figures of her and Lucas, jagged teeth and monstrous faces, houses with no doors or windows. Each crayon stroke was a silent witness to the terror they'd endured. Then came the call. Mrs. Collins, Detective Martinez said one crisp morning, we uncovered something in David's office you should see. At the station, she laid out a chilling collection of documents, forged loan applications, fraudulent investment forms, and falsified life insurance policies. But the worst was a meticulous plan to flee the country with the children. Fake passports, transportation receipts, even a property deed for a house in Mexico. He was planning to disappear, Martinez explained. Your timing stopped him in his tracks. When I returned home, Sarah was in the study, surrounded by brochures for medical school residencies. She looked up, tears shimmering in her eyes. The hospital called, she said, her voice tinged with disbelief. They're offering me my old spot back. They said they'd heard about everything and wanted to help. I sat beside her, recalling the determined young woman who'd once dreamed of saving lives. What are you thinking? I think it's time, she whispered, a fire reigniting in her gaze. Time to be brave again. The divorce proceedings were swift and resolute. David's ongoing threats from jail only fortified our case. When the judge granted Sarah full custody, terminated David's visitation rights, and ordered significant restitution payments, I watched years of fear crumble from her shoulders. 6 months later, we stood outside Sarah's new apartment, the air brimming with the hope of fresh beginnings. Emma and Lucas darted through the rooms, their laughter bouncing off walls that would never witness fear again. Mom? Sarah called from the kitchen. Look at this. She held up a small box I tucked away after Robert died. Inside was the key to my first business office, the one I'd open when everyone told me I'd fail. You never told me how you did it, Sarah said softly. How you started over. I took her hand, smiling at the strength I knew had always been there. One step at a time, sweetheart, and with the people who love you by your side. That evening, as we gathered around Sarah's new dining table, I marveled at how far we'd come. Sarah flipped through medical textbooks between bites of dinner. Emma proudly displayed her latest drawing, this time of a sunny house filled with smiling faces. Lucas built a tower of blocks, unbothered by sudden noises. David's threat that had started it all echoed in my mind. He tried to weaponize my love for my grandchildren. But he never understood that love doesn't make you weak. It makes you fierce. It gives you the strength to fight for what matters most and to teach your children that they are worth more than fear. My phone buzzed, a text from Detective Martinez. They'd uncovered more victims, families who'd suffered under David's schemes. Would you and Sarah be willing to help build their cases? She asked. I glanced at my daughter, the resilience in her eyes unmistakable. Her answer came without hesitation. Tell them yes, she said firmly. We're ready to help. As night settled over our healing family, I thought about the cycles we'd broken and the courage it took to forge a new path. Sometimes the greatest act of love isn't just protecting your children. It's showing them they deserve better and helping others do the same. The envelope trembled in my hands as I stared at the lawyer's letterhead. My sister Charlotte's smug grin hovered in my peripheral vision, her voice like nails on glass. See? Everything worked out as it should, she cooed, false sweetness oozing from every syllable. I scanned the words again, praying they'd somehow change. In accordance with the revised will, dated 3 weeks prior to Harold Matthews' passing. The entire estate, including all properties and financial assets, is to be transferred to Charlotte Matthews. My name is Emma Matthews, and 2 months ago, I lost not only my father but also the inheritance I'd never sought yet always cherished as a symbol of his trust. The money wasn't the heartbreak, it was the betrayal. I'd been away, caring for my sick daughter, while Charlotte wormed her way into Dad's frail confidence and convinced him to rewrite his legacy. Charlotte's tone shifted, sharp and unapologetic. Don't act so surprised, Emma. Someone had to step up while you were off playing nursemaid to your kid. She grabbed her designer handbag, her blazer crisp and pristine, undoubtedly bought with the inheritance she'd stolen. Let's face it, you've always been terrible with money. This arrangement is better for everyone. I sat there in silence, a whirlwind of memories flashing through my mind. Long nights at Dad's side after his diagnosis. The sacrifices I made to be there when he started treatment. But 3 weeks before his death, when Lucy's pneumonia became life-threatening, I had no choice. I left to save my child, trusting Charlotte to do the right thing. Charlotte smirked, her nails clicking rhythmically on the desk. Your daughter's fine now, isn't she? A little cough, and you abandoned Dad in his last days. I was the one who stayed, who helped him see things clearly. My grip tightened around the envelope. Clearly? You mean when he was barely coherent, you twisted his confusion to suit yourself? He'd never. He did, and you'll have to accept it, she snapped, her polished facade slipping. Then, with calculated precision, she slid an ornate invitation across the table. By the way, I'm getting married in 3 months. Marcus's family has high expectations, and as my only sister, you'll contribute. 20,000 should do. You're joking, I said, stunned. You just inherited everything. Dad's house, his accounts, his pension. And all of it is necessary to maintain my lifestyle. She cut in, dismissive. The wedding must be perfect. Marcus deserves nothing less. You have a week to come up with the money. The audacity stole my breath. Family helps family, she'd said. It had been my guiding principle all these years, but Charlotte had twisted it into something grotesque. I cleaned up her messes, covered her debts, and borne the weight of her recklessness. But this was the final straw. I can't give you that kind of money, I said, my voice firm. I'm a single mom on a teacher's salary. Charlotte's sneer deepened. Then figure it out. Take a loan, sell something. I don't care. Just don't embarrass me. She stood, her Louboutins clicking on the polished floor. And don't bother contesting the will. Dad was of sound mind, and I made sure every detail was airtight. As the door closed behind her, a quiet calm settled over me. Charlotte thought she'd won, but she didn't know the whole story. 3 months before Dad's health spiraled, during one of our late-night talks, he'd said, Charlotte's always chasing glitter, but real wealth isn't flashy. It's what you leave behind for the right people. Dad had prepared for this. That evening, after Lucy had fallen asleep, I pulled out the documents Dad had entrusted to me, detailed records of offshore accounts, a trust fund in Lucy's name, and an art collection quietly transferred to my ownership. Charlotte had underestimated him, and me. The next morning, I met with Mr. Peterson, Dad's trusted art dealer. Your father was meticulous, he said, placing a portfolio before me. The collection is worth at least $4 million. Tears pricked my eyes as I read Dad's final letter. My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, then Charlotte has taken the bait. I'm sorry for the pain, but I needed her to believe she'd won. The art, the investments, the trusts, they are yours for Lucy and your future. Let Charlotte learn the hard way that true wealth isn't in possessions but in character. Love always, Dad. I folded the letter carefully, my resolve hardening. Charlotte could bask in her illusion of triumph. Let her plan her grand wedding, revel in her supposed victory. When the time was right, she'd learn the truth. For now, I had work to do and a legacy to protect. The following weeks blurred into a stream of Charlotte's passive-aggressive texts and increasingly thinly veiled threats. Each morning, my phone buzzed with new demands. The wedding planner needs the deposit, or Marcus's mother expects all the immediate family to contribute equally. I ignored them all, quietly working behind the scenes to put my own plans in motion. Mom, why is Aunt Charlotte being so mean? Lucy asked one evening as she helped me stir a pot of soup. Her wide eyes were a mix of innocence and worry, too perceptive for an 8-year-old. She had sensed the tension. I put the spoon down, crouching to meet her gaze. Sometimes people get so caught up in what they want that they forget what really matters. Lucy frowned thoughtfully, like when she didn't visit Grandpa in the hospital. Her words struck deep, but I smiled and pulled her into a hug. Exactly like that. But don't worry, sweetheart. Grandpa knew who was really there for him. The doorbell rang just then, breaking the moment. Standing on my porch was Charlotte, immaculate as ever in a pristine white designer suit, an outfit that likely cost more than my monthly paycheck. Finally decided to grace us with your presence, I said, holding the door open with a hint of sarcasm. Cut the dramatics, Emma, she snapped, stepping inside and glancing around the modest living room as if she expected it to be beneath her. I'm here because you've been ignoring my messages. The wedding is in 8 weeks, and you haven't contributed a dime. Before I could respond, Lucy peeked around the corner. Charlotte's face softened into a sugary smile. Hello, darling. Has your mother told you? You're going to be a flower girl. Lucy looked up at me, unsure, and I rested a hand on her shoulder. Actually, Charlotte, Lucy won't be participating in the wedding. Charlotte blinked, her expression shifting rapidly between disbelief and anger. Excuse me? That's not a request, Emma. Marcus's family expects a proper wedding party. You can't just. I can, and I will. I interrupted coolly. Lucy is not a prop for your perfect wedding, and neither am I. Her forced composure cracked. Is this about the money? She sneered, pulling out her phone. Fine. I'll give you 2 more weeks, but after that, I expect you to pay your share. And for heaven's sake, start attending the planning meetings. The next one's tomorrow at the Ritz-Carlton. Don't embarrass me by showing up in your teacher clothes. I almost laughed at the absurdity. I won't be there, and I won't be contributing. Her perfectly painted lips curled into a sneer. Ungrateful as ever, she spat. After everything I've done for this family, I felt Lucy's hand tighten in mine, grounding me. Get out, Charlotte, I said quietly, my voice steady. And don't come back until you've learned what family actually means. Charlotte's eyes narrowed into slits. You have no idea what I can do, Emma. No idea at all. With that parting threat, she turned and stalked out, her designer heels clicking against the floor. After she left, I knelt to face Lucy, who looked uneasy. Are we in trouble, Mom? I smiled, brushing back a stray lock of her hair. Not at all, sweetheart. We're just getting started. The next morning, I met with Mr. Harrison, Dad's longtime investment manager, in his downtown office. The timing couldn't be better, he said, sliding a report across the table. Your father's investments have grown substantially. The offshore accounts are secure, and the property developments in Singapore are on track to pay out major dividends. I scanned the numbers, my heart pounding. Charlotte had taken the obvious assets, but Dad's real legacy, carefully hidden from prying eyes, had been left to me. How soon can we move on liquidating some of these? Within a week, if needed, Mr. Harrison assured me. Good, I want everything ready before her wedding. That afternoon, while reviewing more of Dad's paperwork, I received a series of texts from Charlotte. Where are you? People noticed your absence. Marcus's mother is asking questions. Stop making me look bad. This is your last chance. Don't test me. As if on cue, my phone rang. I answered to find Marcus's mother, Victoria, on the line. She'd only met me once, at Dad's funeral, but I remembered her sharp-eyed kindness. Emma, dear, I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all, Mrs. Richardson. What can I do for you? Please call me Victoria, she said warmly. I'm calling because I've heard some concerning things. Charlotte claims you're refusing to support the wedding out of spite. It doesn't quite match what I know of you. Thank you for reaching out, I replied carefully. Charlotte and I have had some disagreements about what family responsibility means. I suspected as much, Victoria said with a wry chuckle. You should know, Charlotte has been asking Marcus's relatives for loans, claiming she's under financial strain. Nearly $50,000 so far. $50,000. So that was why Charlotte was so desperate. The inheritance wasn't enough to fund her extravagant lifestyle. The realization made me smile inwardly. Thank you for telling me this, I said. I think it's time I attended one of these planning meetings after all. Splendid, Victoria said, her tone approving. I look forward to seeing you there. The next morning, I received another message from Charlotte. Let's talk. Lunch tomorrow? I showed Lucy the message. What do you think? Should we give Aunt Charlotte another chance? Lucy considered seriously before nodding. Grandpa always said people deserve second chances, even when they're mean. Out of the mouths of babes. Fine, I texted back. Café Laurent, noon. The next day, Charlotte was already seated when I arrived. She looked nervous, a far cry from her usual haughty self. You came, she said quickly. Look, Emma, I need your help. The wedding's gotten out of control, and the inheritance isn't as accessible as I thought. You've already blown through it, I said flatly. What a shock. Her lips tightened, but she pressed on. You've always been the responsible one. Help me fix this, and maybe we can renegotiate. I studied her carefully. There was desperation, but no real regret. She hadn't changed. Not yet. I'll help, I said finally, standing. But on my terms. Come to the gallery opening next week. Bring Marcus and his family. I think it'll be enlightening. The gallery opening was scheduled for 7 sharp, but I arrived early to assist Mr. Peterson with the final touches. Every piece from Dad's collection had been curated with care, telling the story of a lifetime spent in pursuit of beauty and meaning. The centerpiece, an undisclosed Monet that Dad had authenticated just months before his passing, stood concealed behind a deep crimson velvet curtain. Your father had an impeccable sense of timing, Mr. Peterson said as he adjusted a delicate sculpture on its pedestal. He'd have enjoyed watching tonight unfold. I smiled, thinking back to Dad's quiet lessons about patience and precision. This night wasn't just about art, it was about revealing a truth Charlotte never anticipated. The guest list was perfect. Serious collectors, museum representatives, and of course, Marcus's family. Charlotte couldn't resist attending something so high profile, especially if she thought it might elevate her status. Sure enough, she arrived at 7:15, fashionably late, arm in arm with Marcus. Draped in an expensive designer gown, her eyes gleamed as she took in the impressive crowd, clearly pleased with what she assumed was her achievement. She spotted me near the entrance and approached, a practiced smile on her face. Emma, she cooed, air-kissing my cheek. I didn't realize you were involved with this little event. How quaint. I returned her smile, cool and unbothered. Oh, I'm more than just involved. Turning toward Mr. Peterson, I gave him a slight nod. Shall we begin? Mr. Peterson cleared his throat and addressed the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. We're gathered here to celebrate an extraordinary private collection, the Matthews Collection, meticulously assembled over 3 decades by the late Harold Matthews. Charlotte's smile faltered as whispers rippled through the room. The Matthews Collection, she repeated under her breath, her tone sharp with disbelief. Yes, Mr. Peterson continued smoothly, now curated by his daughter Emma, who has generously agreed to showcase select pieces for tonight's event. I could see Charlotte's composure cracking as the implications settled in. Marcus's mother, Victoria, who had an astute eye for fine art, approached one of the featured paintings with interest. Emma, my dear, these pieces are magnificent. Harold always did have impeccable taste. Her voice carried admiration, and a subtle edge Charlotte couldn't miss. Thank you, I said graciously. Dad taught me everything I know about art, though Charlotte never quite had the patience for his lessons. Marcus joined his mother, his eyes wide with recognition as he studied another painting. Is that a Rothko? Victoria smiled knowingly. It certainly is. Pieces like these typically fetch 7 figures, at minimum. Charlotte's face turned pale as Marcus turned to her, clearly confused. Charlotte, why didn't you mention this collection before? And what's this about curation? Charlotte's nails dug into my arm as she hissed. What are you doing? This is supposed to be mine. Actually, I said, raising my voice just enough for nearby guests to hear. Dad transferred ownership of the collection to me well before his passing, along with a few other investments you weren't interested in. At that moment, Mr. Peterson unveiled the hidden Monet. A collective gasp filled the room as everyone took in the masterpiece. I felt Charlotte's grip weaken, her bravado crumbling. How much is it all worth? She whispered, her voice barely audible. The collection alone, close to $4 million. Add the offshore accounts and real estate investments, and it's significantly more. I gently pried her fingers from my arm. Dad always said you focus too much on appearances to recognize real value. Marcus stepped closer, his face hardening. Charlotte, what's going on? Why didn't you know about any of this? Because she was too busy manipulating Dad into changing his will, I said loud enough for Marcus's family to hear. She didn't realize Dad had already safeguarded the important assets. Victoria's sharp intake of breath was audible, and the murmurs around us grew louder. Charlotte's eyes darted around in panic, realizing that the foundation of her carefully curated life was beginning to crumble. "You can't do this," she whispered, desperation clear in her voice. "Emma, please, don't." I held her gaze, seeing not just the sister who had made my life difficult, but also someone lost and scrambling for control. She wasn't a villain, just someone too focused on the wrong things for far too long. "I'm not here to ruin you, Charlotte," I said softly. "But we need to talk. Now." Without waiting for her response, I led her to a private office off the main gallery floor. Once inside, she collapsed into a chair, all pretense gone. "You've ruined everything," she muttered, though the fight had drained out of her voice. "No, Charlotte. You did that yourself, with the debts, the reckless spending, the way you treated Dad when he needed us most." Tears shimmered in her eyes, threatening to spill over. "So what happens now? Are you going to humiliate me in front of Marcus's family? Make me cancel the wedding?" I shook my head. "No, I'm going to help you." Her head snapped up, disbelief written all over her face. "Why?" "Because it's what Dad would have wanted." I handed her a sealed envelope, the real letter Dad had written before he died. "He trusted me to protect the legacy, including you. He knew you'd need guidance, not punishment." She opened the letter, tears finally breaking free as she read Dad's words. "He knew me better than I knew myself," she whispered, wiping her cheeks. "He knew both of us," I said gently. "That's why he left me in charge, not just to manage the assets, but to take care of the family, including you." Charlotte met my eyes, something finally shifting in her expression. "I've been awful to you, to everyone." "Yes, you have. But like Lucy reminded me, everyone deserves a second chance." She gave a shaky laugh. "Lucy's a smart kid." "She is. And she misses the real Charlotte, the one who built blanket forts with me and sneaked cookies when we thought Dad wasn't looking." Charlotte sniffed, dabbing her face with a tissue. "The wedding's in 3 weeks. Will you help me make it something Dad would have been proud of?" "I will," I promised. "But first, let's go back out there and show Marcus's family who you really are, not the social climber, but my sister." Charlotte smiled weakly but genuinely for the first time in years. "Thanks, Emma, for doing what I never would have." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of meaningful conversations and quiet reconciliation. 3 weeks later, I stood by Charlotte's side as she married Marcus in a simple but beautiful ceremony in Dad's garden. Lucy, beaming with pride, scattered rose petals down the aisle, happy to have her aunt back in her life. Dad's collection remained a symbol of his legacy, a reminder that real wealth isn't just in possessions but in understanding what truly matters. And as Charlotte and I began rebuilding our relationship, I realized that sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money or art. It's the wisdom to forgive, to grow, and to hold on to family when it counts most. That morning, I stared at my phone, Kate's words ringing in my ears. The house, our childhood home, was gone, sold without my knowledge or consent. I could still picture it, the yellow 2-story Victorian with its wraparound porch. The garden Mom had nurtured for decades. The tire swing Dad hung from the old oak tree. All of it vanished in a single transaction, one I hadn't even known was happening. "Kate," I said, my voice trembling, "what you did is illegal. You can't sell property that's partially mine without my signature." She let out a sharp laugh. "Actually, I can. Remember those papers you signed during the funeral? The ones for estate administration." A chill crept through me. 3 months ago, when we buried Mom and Dad, both gone within weeks of each other, Mom from cancer and Dad from what the doctors called a broken heart, I'd flown home for the first time in 5 years. Kate had managed everything, the funeral, the paperwork. Between viewings and burial, she thrust a stack of documents at me, saying they needed signatures immediately. "Those were power of attorney documents," she said, smudness dripping from her tone. "You gave me full control over the estate, totally legal." The weight of betrayal pressed down on me. I sank into my office chair, grateful for the solitude of my small accounting firm. "You tricked me," I whispered, "while we were burying our parents." "Oh, spare me the theatrics," Kate snapped. "You gave up your right to an opinion when you abandoned us. 5 years, Sarah. 5 years while I stayed here and took care of everything. Where were you? Off living your best life in Chicago, too busy to even visit for Christmas. Her words stung because they weren't entirely wrong. I'd left desperate to escape the endless comparisons to my perfect older sister. Kate had always been the golden child, class president, cheerleader, the one who married her high school sweetheart and never left town. I was the rebel, the one who dared to want something different. I sent money, I said defensively. I offered to help hire a nurse. Money isn't the same as being here. Kate cut me off. You didn't see what I went through, watching Mom waste away while running my business, helping Dad with his meds when he didn't even know my name some days. No, Sarah, you don't get to judge. I closed my eyes, flashes of memory surfacing. Mom healthy and happy, planting roses in the garden. Dad in his workshop, the scent of sawdust filling the air. And the guilt, the relief I'd felt every time I hung up after another tense call about visiting. How much? I asked finally. How much did you sell it for? $450,000, she said. The market's insane right now. The buyers paid cash. The number hit me like a punch. Our parents had bought that house for $85,000, pouring their dreams into it for 3 decades, and Kate had sold it like it was nothing. Half of that is mine, I said firmly. Power of attorney doesn't entitle you to everything. This is inheritance fraud. Her laugh was sharper this time, but there was a flicker of unease beneath it. Good luck proving that, she said. And anyway, the money's gone. Gone? I nearly shouted. You spent $450,000 in a week. Well, she began, her voice softening to a wheedling tone. James and I are finally having our dream wedding. I've already put down deposits on the venue, flowers, the dress. It's going to be perfect. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. You spent our inheritance, our parents' legacy, on a wedding? Not just the wedding, she added quickly. We're also putting in a pool and buying James the boat he's always wanted. He deserves it after everything he's been through these last few years. My anger crystallized into something colder. Everything he's been through, supporting his wife while she cared for her dying parents, that's what you call hardship. Don't you dare judge me, she snapped. And anyway, that's not why I called. The thing is, some of the bigger payments are coming due, and I'm a little short. I was hoping. I waited, incredulous. I was hoping you could help out, she finished. Just a loan. $30,000 should cover it. A laugh burst out of me, bitter and humorless. Let me get this straight. You sold the house behind my back, blew my half of the money on a wedding and a boat, and now you want me to bail you out. It's what Mom and Dad would have wanted, she said, her voice adopting a familiar, sanctimonious edge. Family helps family. Family doesn't steal from family, I shot back. The answer is no, not just no, hell no. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. Your lawyer? Her confidence faltered. Sarah, come on. Don't be like this. We're sisters. No, I said quietly. Sisters don't do what you did. Goodbye, Kate. I hung up before she could respond, my hands trembling as I pulled up my browser to search for estate lawyers. A memory surfaced. Mom's voice, weak but resolute, during one of our last calls. I know why you left, sweetheart, she'd said. I understand. Just remember, truth always comes out in the end. Looking at Kate's messages, pinging one after the other, alternating between threats and pleas, I realized Mom had been right. The truth was out. It just hurt more than I'd expected. Opening my email, I began typing. Dear Mr. Roberts, I'm writing regarding a case of inheritance fraud. This time, I wasn't running away. 2 weeks after uncovering Kate's betrayal, I found myself back in Cedar Grove for the first time since the funeral. The familiar streets felt strange, as if the memories had been rearranged in my absence. Driving past what had once been our home, I saw strangers' cars in the driveway and new curtains in the windows. The sight turned my stomach. I parked at the Riverside Inn, the town's only decent hotel, where I had booked a room for my meeting with Daniel Matthews, my lawyer. Daniel had flown in from Chicago at my request, aware that the small-town politics here might muddy the waters. Kate's husband, James, was part of one of Cedar Grove's most influential families. I needed someone impartial and unshakable. As I checked in, the desk clerk, Mary, lit up with recognition. Sarah Mitchell. It's been ages. So sorry about your parents. And Kate, how the whole town's buzzing about her big wedding plans. Of course they were. I forced a polite smile, collected my room key, and retreated upstairs before the conversation could sting any further. Later that evening, my phone rang. The caller ID displayed a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Sarah, it's Linda Thompson, from next door to your parents' house. Linda. She had been our parents' neighbor for decades, a steady presence in their lives when I hadn't been. I saw you drive by today, she continued. I wasn't sure whether to call, but after what Kate did, your mother would have wanted you to know. Can we meet? Curiosity and dread warred within me, but 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Linda in the hotel restaurant. She looked older than I remembered, her hands fidgeting with a napkin. I've been holding onto this since your mom passed, she said, pulling out her phone. She asked me to record something 3 days before she died. She was too weak to write, but said it was important. Linda hit play, and my mother's voice filled the space between us, weak but resolute. Linda, I need you to witness this. Kate, the house belongs to both my girls equally. Sarah must agree to any decisions about it. Promise me, Kate. Do right by your sister. Kate's tearful response followed. I promise, Mom. I swear. I stared at Linda, my mind racing. She knew what Kate was planning. I whispered. There's more, Linda said, her tone grave. The night your father passed, Kate brought him papers to sign. He was so medicated he could barely hold a pen. I saw her guiding his hand. The implication hit me like a slap. She had him sign over the house while he was dying. Linda nodded, guilt etched into her expression. I should have said something sooner. Then last week, I overheard Kate and James laughing in their backyard about how easy it was to trick you. My hands trembled as I called Daniel. We need to add witness testimony and pursue criminal charges, I said. This isn't just fraud, it's exploitation. The next morning, I walked into the law office where mediation had been arranged. Kate was already there, her hair and makeup immaculate, James at her side. Her confidence faltered when Linda walked in behind me. What's she doing here? Kate demanded. Providing evidence, Daniel said calmly, setting a recorder on the table. He played the audio of Mom's final wishes. Kate's face drained of color, and James turned to her, his expression darkening. You told me Sarah agreed to everything, he said, his voice low. You said she signed off on selling the house. Kate stammered, panic creeping into her tone. I did what was best for us. For the family. James stood abruptly. If you involve me in fraud, Kate. His unfinished threat hung in the air as he stormed out of the room. Kate turned to me, desperation replacing her usual smugness. Sarah, please. You don't understand. The vendors are expecting payments. The wedding's already announced. James's family. Should have thought of that before you lied and stole, I cut in. My lawyer has a settlement offer. Void the sale, surrender your share of the proceeds, and pay damages. Otherwise, we proceed with criminal charges. Tears welled in Kate's eyes. Criminal charges? But I'm your sister. Yes, I said quietly, you are. And that's what makes this betrayal unforgivable. I stood gathering my things. You have until tomorrow to decide. Oh, and you might want to start canceling those vendors. Something tells me James's family won't be footing the bill. As I walked out, I heard Kate's sobs echo behind me. A part of me wanted to turn back to console the sister I'd once idolized, but that part was drowned out by the years of hurt and her recent betrayal. Later, Linda texted, Your mom would be proud. You did the right thing. I looked out the hotel window at the town I used to call home. Justice was finally within reach, but the cost of the truth weighed heavily on me. 6 months flew by in a whirlwind of legal battles, sleepless nights, and a constant undercurrent of exhaustion. But in the end, the settlement was finalized. Kate had been forced to void the fraudulent house sale, repay every stolen cent, and cover punitive damages. The numbers were staggering. $450,000 from the house sale and another $200,000 in damages. To pay it all, she sold her own home. Last I heard, she was living with a cousin in Milwaukee. Her engagement to James shattered after his family uncovered her lies. I sat in my Chicago apartment, staring at the final statement from my lawyer. The weight I'd been carrying for months felt lighter, though not entirely gone. Just as I set the papers aside, my phone buzzed with a call. Linda Thompson. The new owners of the house want to meet you, she said. They'd been fixing it up, and I think you should see what they've done." That's how I found myself back in Cedar Grove, standing on the porch of my childhood home. The door opened to reveal a warm, smiling couple, David and Maria Chen, with 2 children peeking shyly from behind them. "Please come in," Maria said, her voice kind and welcoming. Stepping inside was surreal. The walls were painted a fresh color, and the rooms had been modernized, yet the spirit of the home remained. The bay window in the kitchen, where Mom had grown her herbs, still framed the light. Dad's old workshop had been transformed into a playroom, but his workbench had been restored and preserved in one corner. "We found this during renovations," David said, handing me an old dusty photo album. "We thought it should go back to you." I opened it carefully, tears pricking my eyes as I flipped through photos I'd never seen. Mom and Dad when they were young, Kate and me as kids, family vacations, and quiet, everyday moments. The weight of everything that had been lost settled over me. But this time, it felt less like a burden and more like a bittersweet reminder. "This house has such a beautiful energy," Maria said softly. "We can feel how much love it's held over the years. You're always welcome to visit." That night, back at Linda's house, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from Kate. "I heard you're in town. Can we talk?" The next morning, I met her at the coffee shop on Main Street. I barely recognized her. Gone were the designer outfits and polished facade. She looked tired, worn down, and painfully human. "I'm sorry," she said the moment I sat down. "I know it doesn't fix anything, but I needed to say it." I studied her carefully. She seemed different, less angry, less defensive. "Why did you do it?" I asked. She looked down, her hands twisting a paper napkin. "I was angry. At you for leaving, at Mom and Dad for needing so much, at James for pushing me into a wedding I didn't even want. But mostly, I was angry at myself. I gave up my dreams to stay here, and instead of owning that, I blamed everyone else." "You could have asked for help," I said quietly. "I know." She wiped her eyes. "I'm in therapy now, trying to understand why I became that person. Why I hurt the people I love most." For the first time in years, we talked, really talked. About Mom and Dad, about grief and guilt, about all the unspoken expectations that had crushed us in different ways. When I told her about the photo album, she smiled faintly. "Do you remember the splash pool Dad made us that summer?" I asked. Her smile grew. "You wore rain boots the whole time. And you kept cannonballing until Mom dragged us inside for dinner." For a fleeting moment, we weren't 2 estranged sisters. We were just Sarah and Kate again, laughing over shared memories. "I know I can't fix this," she said as we left. "But if there's ever a way to make amends, I'll try." A few weeks later, I used the settlement money to establish the Mitchell Family Foundation, a program to support families caring for aging parents. The first grant went to hiring full-time caregivers for 3 local families. When Kate heard, she called me. "Mom and Dad would have been proud," she said softly. "There's a spot on the board if you want it," I offered. "Your experience could help others avoid what we went through." There was a long pause before she replied. "I'd like that. Thank you." The next weekend, I visited the Chens again. Their children were laughing in the backyard, their joy echoing across the lawn where Kate and I had once played. Maria was tending to Mom's rose garden, now more vibrant than ever. David joined me on the porch. "We're thinking of building a splash pool for the kids this summer. Something simple but fun." I smiled, remembering the old photo of 2 little girls splashing in their makeshift pool. "They'll love it," I said. "Trust me." As I drove away, I realized something important. Losing everything hadn't been the end of my story, it had been the beginning of something better. Sometimes the truth doesn't just set you free, it helps you build a new kind of home.